X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1226, and today's date is March 12th, 2017, and the title of the episode is "The Chaos Around the World Begins on Schedule, Ushering in the Economic Crisis." Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, what's very strange is that after the elections of Donald Trump, leading into January of his inauguration, up to this point, we saw this bounce of hope, consumer sentiment rising, the stock market, of course, moving up and up and up and up, and we saw a lot of things bounce. And now things have bounced up and are headed back down. It looked like the whole thing was a dead cat bounce, and now things are deteriorating very, very quickly. Now, during the inauguration back in January, the restaurant sales and traffic, they moved up just a little bit. Well, it looks like since that period of time, coming from the most recent Restaurant Performance Index report by the National Restaurant Association, well, it looks like same-store sales and customer traffic, well, they remained soft in January, and they started to really deteriorate in February. And what we're seeing is that the disclosure by restaurant operators, 50% of whom said same-store sales declined year over year. This is the second highest reading in recent history, and second only to the 53% reported last August. And what we're seeing right now is that same-store sales fell by negative 3.7% in February, with traffic declining negative 5%. And we can see at this point, when we look back to last year, well, restaurant traffic and sales are way down. And we're not just seeing this in the food industry, we're seeing this throughout retail. And we can see at this point that the retail apocalypse is upon us right now. And when we look at retail, everything is not awesome. In fact, it's kind of awful. This is coming from Target CEO Brian Cornell. Our industry is in the midst of a seismic shift. And of course, you read the headlines. In fact, many of you write the reports. We're operating in an incredibly challenging environment. All across the retail industry, many of our competitors are aggressively rationalizing their assets. They are closing stores, exiting markets. They're cutting costs just to keep their heads above water. We've not seen this number of distressed retailers since 2009 in the Great Recession. Cheap debt created a massive retail estate bubble that is now bursting right before our eyes. And we've talked about this before, where retail square feet per capita in the United States is more than 6 times that of Europe or Japan. Thousands of new doors opened and rents soared. This created this gigantic bubble. And like housing, the bubble is now bursting. And what we're seeing is that in North America, we have too many shopping malls. This was during the boom right before the Great Recession, and things started to deteriorate quite quickly throughout this fake recovery. And we've been tracking this, we've been monitoring this, and we've been seeing retail continually declining, with mass store closures, mass store layoffs. But of course, the corporate media kept on blaming it on the weather. It was the way the sun was coming up. The moon was shining too bright. They had so many different excuses. It was unbelievable. But what we're seeing right now is that as people lost their jobs, as the demand for all these products kind of disappeared, because people don't have the extra money to go out and purchase these goods, retail took a hit. It wasn't because of online. That was a cover story. That was an excuse. Online sales make 1/10 of the retail market. So that's impossible. So what we're seeing right now is this huge contraction, and people are all scratching their heads. How did this happen all of a sudden out of nowhere? Well, we know how it happened. We've been tracking it. We've been following it. We understand that this economy has been contracting since 2008. Nothing improved. The whole thing is one gigantic illusion to keep us all in the dark like everything is fine. That they came up with the answer and they figured out how to make the economy all better. It was never made all better. And this is what people are going to understand very, very shortly. things are going to rapidly deteriorate. People aren't going to understand, why is this all of a sudden happening? And we can see right now, when we look at everything that we've been looking at for a very long time, it's accelerating right now. And things are getting worse. And the corporate media doesn't know how to keep up with these stories. Like, how do we explain this away? People aren't believing anymore. And this is when the illusion and reality start to separate. This is when people scratch their heads and say, something's going on here. We had it in 2008, where we went, whoa, what's going on here? Something's wrong. Why do we need all these bailouts? I thought the economy was fine. I thought everything was contained. I thought everything was rated AAA. Housing could never go down. Well, we're seeing the same thing happen right now. And this is why you need to be prepared and ready for what is coming. We see that Jeff Sessions was out there. He has about 46 remaining individuals that need to resign. And we can see there was a problem with one individual who didn't want to resign. He wanted to be fired. And that was Preet Bharara. And he refused to quit. So he was fired. Now, everyone's making a really big deal about this. Oh my God, he was fired from this. But if you look back in 1993, Jeff Sessions was fired by Bill Clinton's Attorney General Janet Reno in the exact same way. We actually have the letter showing how he was let go. He was fired. This is done all the time when a new administration comes into power. And this is what we're seeing once again. Now, we understand that Trump put forth his new refugee temporary ban. And we can see already that the corporate media, they're making another big deal about it. And we can see that there's a judge out there, Judge Connolly, who decided to uphold this ban for Trump. And he went ahead and he blocked Trump's revised travel ban on Friday, barring enforcement of the policy to deny U.S. entry to the wife and child of a Syrian refugee who was already granted asylum in the United States. Now, Connolly's temporary restraining order applies only to the family of the Syrian refugee who brought the case anonymously to protect the identities of his wife and daughter who still live in Aleppo. So we can see right now the corporate media, they're not going to let up on this, and they're going to be pushing their agenda. How far are they going to be able to take it? Well, it looks like maybe not that far. Now, we understand that Obama, he really thought, and so did the establishment, the deep state, the central bankers. They thought that Hillary was going to be president because we understand that Obama bought a home in Hawaii. He was going to move out of Washington, go back to Hawaii, and do whatever he was going to do there. Probably write a book like we just saw him get paid for, about $60 million or so. But he was going to leave Washington. But since Hillary did not get into the White House, he decided, you know something, I'm not going to leave Washington. I'm going to purchase a house there. Eric Holder, Valerie Jarrett. We're all going to sit there in our little war room inside of Washington and make plans for something else. And we see that Representative Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania, well, he was caught on film saying that Obama extended his stay in Washington, D.C. for only one reason, and it had nothing to do with his daughters attending school and wanted to wait for them to graduate, because he already had plans to go to Hawaii. He's there to run a shadow government to disrupt the Trump administration. And we can see at this point, there are a lot of people out there talking about this. And we can see that Eric Holder was saying that, okay, Trump is ready to go. And we know that Valerie Jarrett works very closely with him, plans everything. She whispers into his ear, and we understand from ex-CIA Robert Steele that something is planned for May 1st. And we understand that Obama has been putting together a lot of individuals. We understand that they want riots and protests across the country. We already see these individuals saying that they're not going to be paying taxes. I don't think anyone should be paying taxes, but we can see this whole point is not because of the central bank. Let's go up against the central bank. It's to go up against the Trump administration. So we can see that we're coming into very chaotic times, not just here in the United States, but we're seeing chaos all across the globe right now. We see out in Italy right now, there were riots and police with water cannons and tear gas fighting off protesters. And, I mean, we could just see this is happening in many different areas. And it's going to continue because you have to remember, the elite right now, the deep state, the central banks, they don't want to give up power in any of these countries. They like having the power. They need to be in control. They need to keep their agenda moving forward. And the people now are figuring it out. Well, wait a minute. The central bank is no good for us. They put all our countries into debt. We see austerity. People can't find work. People are poor. A lot of the wealth have moved up to the very, very wealthy. And what we're seeing is that there's a huge movement. And this is going to continue. Now, we are continually seeing more and more chaos, which has started this March. And actually, if you listen to Cliff High, he did say that chaos was going to start in March. And we're actually starting to see a lot of chaotic things occur. And we see right now that Erdogan, he called the Dutch fascist after the Turkish foreign minister was barred entry. And we see at this point things went a little chaotic in the Netherlands, and we're starting to see things really get out of hand there. And we can see on both sides, we see Erdogan calling the Dutch fascists. We see Erdogan calling the Dutch Nazis. We see the Dutch banning the Turkish minister from flying into the country. We see protests and rioting. And we can see that demonstrators, they're waving Turkish flags, gathering outside the Turkish consulate in the Dutch city of Rotterdam. And we can see this is all happening right before the elections, right before elections are coming up. And the whole thing is getting very, very chaotic. And it's funny that Erdogan would be out there calling the Netherlands fascist, because when we look at the track record of Turkey, well, the number of individuals that were sacked by government decrees by Turkey was about 128,000. Remember, after the coup, the Netherlands, 0. Number of people detained were 94,000. Schools, dormitories, and universities shut down, 2,000 by decree in Turkey. Academics that lost their jobs, 7,000 individuals. Judges, prosecutors dismissed, 4,000. All in the Netherlands, 0. So, I mean, we can see what is happening here. Things are really getting out of hand. They're becoming very, very chaotic. We see Turkish protesters outside the Consulate General of the Netherlands in Istanbul. Well, they pulled down the Dutch flag and they replaced it with Turkey's flag. It was only up there for like an hour or so, and then it was put back. But we can see at this point that chaos is really being pushed in this area. Now Turkey vows harsh retaliation after the Dutch Prime Minister says, not apologizing, that Erdogan is nuts. So we can see that things are escalating right now. In Italy, we see him in Turkey. We see the Middle East. Well, that's starting to escalate. We see in North Korea, things are starting to ramp up. We're seeing a lot of chaos throughout the country. Now, I've always said we need to look at the actions of the president, not what they say. And during Trump's campaign and what he's been saying, that he would like to speak to North Korea. Now, right now, we know that Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador in North Korea, she says that there's going to be no talks. We know that China is pushing talks with North Korea and the United States to put this whole nuclear problem to rest here. We have to see what Trump and what his next move is going to be. I know they said there's a lot of options out there, but he needs to speak to the North Koreans. It looks like they were going to speak to the North Koreans. Things were already set up. Let's see what happens next, because to calm the situation down, this needs to be done. We see out in Libya, things are really starting to heat up there. We understand that General Haftar, he has taken over a lot of the oil ports. Of course, the UN-backed government, the United States government central bankers, they're very angry about this. Russia is working with Haftar right now, trying to unite the country. It looks like they want elections there. We already see the commander from U.S. AFRICOM is testifying in front of the Senate Arms Committee talking about how the Islamic State is regrouping in the country. We can see they're making the case to go back into Libya because things are really getting out of hand. Again, more chaos. We see Russia, they have started the preparations to modernize the naval base in Tartus in Syria, and this is going to be beginning this spring. Now, we understand there's a lot of troops coming into Syria right now, and Assad is saying that, listen, we have not invited any of these troops into Syria, whether it be Turkey, whether it be the United States, whether it be the UK, it makes no difference. They were not invited into Syria. This is an invasion. And again, we're going to have to look at the actions of what Trump is doing here. Right now, there's a lot of troops that are being built up. We understand the deep state, the central bankers, they push their agendas in the country. They're pushing to get maybe a war started with Russia, which we've been seeing for a very long time. But I don't know if this is going to be able to be kicked off unless there's some type of an event inside of Syria. But we are seeing that they're still following their goals. They're still pushing their agenda. They're still trying to get Assad or split Syria up. And we can see chaos really starting to ramp up around the country right now, which is going to lead into the economic crisis heading towards us this summer. We see there was an intruder arrested after entering the White House grounds. Now, he was wearing a backpack. There was nothing in the backpack. But I'm curious, was this pushed to scare Trump? Remember, going back a couple of reports, I said, if they cannot control him, they're going to scare him. By having someone jump over the fence while Trump was there might make him a little nervous. It might be a little message that was sent. The next one might be someone taking a shot at him, trying to get him in line with their agenda. And we can see at this point that things are starting to really heat up here. Now, what's very interesting, we know that Vitaly Churkin, he died of a heart attack. At least that's what we think happened. But the State Department asked the New York Medical Examiner not to publicly release information about Churkin's cause of death. Now, the statement was, in order to comply with international law and protocol, the New York City Law Department has instructed the Office of Chief Medical Examiner to not publicly disclose the cause and manner of death of Ambassador Vitaly Churkin. Now, we see at this point the initial report saying there was no foul play, that it looks like it was some type of cardiac arrest. But we understand the CIA has ways of creating heart attacks. I mean, we need to go back to 1975 here. During the Church Committee hearings, the existence of a secret assassination weapon came to light. The CIA had developed a poison that could cause a victim to have an immediate heart attack. This poison could be frozen into the shape of a dart and then fired at high speed from a pistol. The gun was capable of shooting the icy projectile with enough speed that the dart would go through the clothes of the target and leave just a tiny red mark. Once in the body, the poison would melt and be absorbed into the bloodstream, causing a heart attack. Now, that was back in 1975. Today, technology has advanced, and I'm wondering if the State Department is looking at this and they found evidence of foul play, and the CIA at the time might have murdered Vitaly Churkin, and once Russia hears about this, well, there'd be problems. There could be war. There could be something happening. And it looks like maybe at this point they're holding this back to say, okay, wait a minute, we need to work this out before anything else goes any further. And we can see there were a lot of individuals from Russia that died of heart attack or unknown reasons. And it wasn't just like one or two or three people. It was many different people that this happened to. And it looks like the deep state, the central bankers, they are trying to push their agenda to create some type of an event to push us into this war. And we can see as we move throughout this year, going into April, going into May with the debt ceiling, this whole thing is going to get more and more chaotic as we approach this economic crisis. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.